remember Great Lakes?
Yeah.
I was actually wearing my Great Lakes
Oh,
shirt
did
at the
you-
distillery today.
I didn't know you got a Glencairn there.
Yeah, we went to Fredericksburg, Texas, here about an hour north. Wine country in Texas, it's great, but there's also a bunch of distilleries, and I wore my Great Lakes sweatshirt the whole weekend, the whole 4 days, and everybody kept making fun of me that was my uniform.
No, you wearing the same thing over and over and over again.
Like this shirt is my uniform.
What I think Lindsay put something on Facebook today of you and Noah in your blue hoodies, and I'm thinking, I think I saw him in that for 10 straight weeks in the winter once.
Yeah. A podcast about bourbon and the ones who drink it. This is Bourbon Matters. Welcome to Bourbon Matters. I'm Jake.
I'm Dan.
I am the talent PDL.
It says Roberto PDL on the screen.
Yeah, and I don't wait until we try whiskey, so I start drinking early.
So tonight we're talking about overhyped and just hyped in general whiskeys. So we tried a whiskey on the podcast pretty close to a year ago.
Yeah.
That was this one right here, the 2022 Batch 2 Castle and Key Bourbon. And we gave it a pretty solid review at the time. And it was, and Daniel kind of get into this a little bit later, but it was pretty hyped up. And we think we fell for it because we tried it again recently and all confirmed that it is not as good as we remembered it to be. Mm-hmm. So we'll get into that. First, we wanted to just kind of talk about like hyped bourbon in general. So we pulled up a couple lists, and some of these we agree with, some of these we don't. We thought it would be a fun exercise to just kind of talk through some of these. So this first list is the top 5 most overrated bourbons from Bourbon and Banter. Number 5 is Garrison Brothers Cowboy Bourbon. We all, Roberto's tried this separately, but Dan and I tried this at Sam's Tasting this winter. And I think both of us were underwhelmed, especially based on the price point.
Yeah, because I've had a single barrel that I felt was decent. I think the Bal Maria is really good. I drank it on a couple episodes ago and said it's really good, but it's expensive.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, when I tried the Cowboy Bourbon, I thought it wasn't any better than the single barrel I had, nor was it better than the Bal Maria, and it was quite a bit more expensive.
Yeah, the proof is much higher than the single.
Yeah,
barrel.
it's always a. I mean, I think the 2022 release was 129, I think. And I think the 21 release was like 132 or some crap like that. It's hot.
Yeah. So yeah,
I like it. I mean, I like the Cowboy's a good bourbon.
Yeah, overall it's not bad. But for MSRP on it is $219, so it's got to be really damn good to be worth that price. And I don't.
Yeah, no, I mean that's what I was going to say. This is the whiskey itself is good. I don't know if it's $220. I bought a bottle just because it's so hard to find.
Yeah.
The whiskey's good. It's just it's a ridiculous MSRP, and I do think Guadalupe and Bal Maria are way better bourbons than Cowboy.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know if I would buy another bottle. Like, I got one, tried it. It was great. A lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's where I left Bal Maria's. I'm glad I bought that bottle. I'm not going to regret buying that bottle, but will I buy another one for $170? No.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a little bit of a
They're expensive bourbons for sure.
Next up on the list at number 4 is Copper Tongue Orphan Barrel. It's an MSRP of $100. So Orphan Barrel is kind of marketed as like these lost barrels that somebody is bottling. So this article says that this particular one, the Copper Tongue, is a 16-year Dickel, which is a pretty old whiskey.
Yeah.
We've had the Dickel 15 and all really enjoy it. But I don't think any of us have tried this particular
I've never had
Orphan Barrel label.
I've seen it, and I don't know. I've gone on two different thought processes for it both times. Of Orphan Barrels mean you're not going to see it a ton, or you're never going to see it again. So
Right.
part of it's like, well, if I spend this money on it and like it, I'm going to be really pissed that I can never buy a bottle again.
Yeah.
But then the other thing is like, well, what if I spend all this money and I don't like it? Then I just spend a bunch of money on a bottle that you'll never be able to find again.
Right.
So I that's kind of why I've stayed away from it. So seeing it on here, I think again too, part of it's the price again, of around $100 for something that you're only really going to be able to try once.
Yeah, that's fair.
I've never had it. Yeah. I couldn't say either way.
Number 3 is Old Forester Birthday Bourbon, which is about at $130 MSRP.
Yeah, you're never going to
find it that cheap. So I don't believe I've ever tried this, but I've heard a lot of people speak very highly of it.
Yeah, I tried it once at Sam's and thought it was good, but each year's a little different.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sure he's had that bottle since we've known him. And I tried one at work a while ago, and it didn't stand out nearly as good to me as the one I had at Sam's. So
Yeah. I've never tried it, but it's ridiculous to find. It's unfindable. So I don't know if I'll ever try
It's very difficult to find.
it. Yeah.
All right, number 2, Old Fitz Decanter. So this is an interesting call out because every year the Old Fitzgerald is a different age spec or whatever. So this is kind of a really general statement.
yeah,
But I know I've had the 14, 15, and 16 year that I've all tried at Sam's. And I really enjoyed all 3. And this year I got the 19, which Dan, you tried it this year, right?
yeah, I had it this year. I thought it was good for the price and for as hard as it is to find, especially considering unless you get really lucky, you're not going to see it at retail. I wasn't blown away by it, but I didn't think it was. It was a little surprising it was on here of one of the top 5 most overrated. I thought it was good, but nothing stood out and had like a religious experience for me.
Yeah, it's MSRP is $110, and for something that's 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, that's not a terrible price. So yeah, it's an interesting one to add to this list. Roberto, you have a couple of those, right?
He muted himself.
14.
Oh, there he is.
Wait,
Sorry,
what happened? Where'd I
say
go?
that again. You muted yourself.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now you're muted again.
Dang it. Okay.
There you go.
All right,
there
now
you're
you're
back.
good.
It's a stupid space bar. Space bar. When you hit it accidentally, it mutes you. Yeah, I have the 14, and I mean, I like it. I didn't pay a ridiculous amount of money for it. I did not pay MSRP, but I did pay, I think it was like 160, maybe even 180 for it, which is, it's again significantly more than MSRP. And I enjoy it. I think the 14 is well done, but I mean, I just don't know what the hype is about it. I really don't. I think there's much better bourbons out there than the Old Fitzgerald Decanter series. I've never tried the 17 or the 19. I think the highest I've tried is a 15. So I don't know. I'd be interested to try Jake's 19.
Yeah, I'll save it for you. All right, and number one, which is probably going to be a little bit controversial, is Blanton's.
I don't know if it's controversial today.
I don't think it's controversial. I think it is overrated.
I think
yeah.
like
Well, I
90%.
think yeah, that's a good point. I think a lot of people, there is a lot of hype around Blanton's. Once you've had two bottles, I'd say two different bottles, you'll realize that there's vastly different quality of Blanton's, and yeah, it's not always worth overpaying, and sometimes not even worth the MSRP price tag.
Yeah,
I think it's. Oh, go ahead, Roberto.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna. I agree with your points. I think the MSRP. I think it's fine. I think the $60. I would pay it. I would pay for Blanton's for the bourbon. It is. It is mash bill. Two. One. It is mash bill one.
Two.
It is two.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
We did it last week.
I know. I had such a hard time freaking remembering that stupid stuff. It is mash bill two. I like the flavor. I like the taste of mash bill too. But I mean, I follow a bunch of whiskey accounts and whiskey review accounts and just like whiskey people, not even connoisseurs, like just the average whiskey guy. And I mean, if I was to inventory this thing, I guarantee 90% of the people I follow on Instagram agree that this is completely overrated. There's actually a really funny meme out there. I'll send it to the website at some point about Blanton's. But again, it's good. I just don't know what the hype. Well, I mean, I know what the hype is. It's a Buffalo Trace product. It's got the clout of Buffalo Trace, and it's Blanton's, and it's a pretty bottle, and it's got the collectible topper. Blah blah blah. But there's people out there still paying $200, $250 for this, and that's just absolutely ridiculous in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, when you get a good single barrel, though, it's a good single barrel.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
completely agree.
I've had some that are like, I wouldn't say unenjoyable, but they're disappointing, especially if you overpaid for it.
Yeah, I pick you up at some point.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think that it's controversial being number one. I mean, is it good? Yes. Is it great at $60? I think it's good at $60. Is it nice to have? Yes, but is it overrated to the point where you need to be paying 4 times more than MSRP? Not even close.
Not at all. There's way better bourbons out there.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So then we've got another list from mashed.com. Their list is 23 bourbons you'll regret buying. So these aren't necessarily overhyped, but I'm going to pick some of the ones that kind of are. And we'll kind of talk about it. So number 3 on their list is Angel's Envy, the straight bourbon. So this is Angel's Envy's flagship bourbon. God, that was a mouthful.
That's a mouthful.
And this one, I know a lot of people really enjoy Angel's Envy. I think there is a little bit too much hype around it. And I actually feel like it's gone downhill a little bit in terms of quality. I don't remember where I heard this from, but I had heard in recent years that they were actually tapped out of like the best MGP barrels, and they're starting to like scrape the bottom of MGP's offerings, which is why it's not as good recently.
That makes sense.
Or that the better stuff they are able to get from MGP is actually they're saving it for like their cask strength release and stuff like that. So
yeah, I don't think I've ever bought just a regular bottle of Angel's Envy. I think I bought one of their cask strengths in port barrel and their cask strength ice cider. I liked their port barrel one I wasn't that big on. But I like the ice cider cask a lot.
Yeah, ice cider's pretty good. It's very much a dessert bourbon, but it's pretty tasty.
Yeah,
And
I have nothing against Angel's Envy. I think, MSRP. I mean, I don't know. I don't mind it. It's a good whiskey. I agree with you, Jake. I think when I started trying Angel's Envy about 3 years ago, I could tell it was a better quality, a better taste profile, and that may be the case, right? That they're scraping the bottom of MGP's warehouses now. I don't have a big issue with it. I enjoy it. Now, if we're going to talk about Angel's Envy Rye, that's a completely different story. That's one of my favorite freaking whiskey.
Yeah, Angel's Envy Rye is really good. I would recommend that one as well. All right, another one that Roberto's not going to be happy about on this list is Willet Pot Still. So I believe we've done Willet Pot Still on the show, right?
It was one of Roberto's top 5 findable.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's the one we drank on that episode too, right?
Yep.
Pretty sure.
We did. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you obviously this is one of your top 5 findable whiskeys. And I really enjoy it. Me and Dan were talking before the show. I don't know if I'd put it in like my top 20. But I do like it. I have at least one bottle of it. I have the really big one.
The 1.5.
Yeah, the gas tank. Because it's cool.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, Dan though has some opinions on it, right?
It's not that I was never really a huge fan of the pot still, but we were talking about it at work, and we both, me and the master distiller, have said we've tried the Family Reserve Rye where we've really liked a bottle. Then we've both tried a bottle of Family Reserve Rye that we both thought tasted awful. Like it was, and it's not a single barrel. It's.
You mean this one?
Yeah.
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 The 4-year.
Yeah, and I remember like when we first all started drinking together, those were ones that you guys were looking for.
Yeah,
but it's one of those that I've never had that with the pot still, but I know that the Family Reserve Rye, there's been times where I thought it was good and times I thought it was bad.
Man, I think it's good every single time. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I haven't tried one that I disliked. There is definitely some variation.
There is.
But like, for someone that doesn't care for ryes as much, like you, Dan, I think it's probably harder for you, or you probably notice the variation a bit more.
Yeah.
And like, there's some of those flavors aren't your favorite, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. This, it still is one of my go-tos. What are you rubbing on your desk? I don't know. It's probably the new mouse that I got from my work. I like this whiskey. I really love the bottle. I know, I take these reviews with a grain of salt because you gotta wonder: is it a panel? Is it a panel of experts? Is it just a bourbon intermediate?
Some guy in his mom's basement.
Yeah, exactly. Is it a middle of the road connoisseur that's just writing his own opinions? Who knows?
Yeah.
I think it's a good whiskey. I think it's a good value for, what is it, like $35, $40? I mean, it's not an expensive whiskey.
Yeah, I think it's something around there.
Yeah, so I don't know. I disagree with that being on the list, but that's just like every whiskey. This is everybody's personal opinion.
Yeah. So another one that's on the list that is surprising is Heaven Hill's Larceny Barrel Proof. I think we've all tried a Larceny Barrel Proof that was excellent at one time or another.
And that's
go ahead.
that's the reason me and Jake were talking about this. The thing that's weird with they have 3 different batches every year.
Yeah.
And each one tastes completely different. So I find it weird that they put something like this on here when there's meant to be variations in flavor from batch to batch.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a strange call.
Interesting. It is interesting. So I like it. I mean, I think it's hard to find, and I think this is one of those that justifiable, hard to find whiskeys. It's good. They don't make a lot, and it's great.
Yeah, and another one that's on here is Early Times, which is funny.
This
Yeah, I
is
think we
super
all
steak.
disagree on that.
Yeah,
What
like
is this
blatantly disagree. Early Times is really good. If you can find it, you should absolutely get it.
So good.
Yeah,
It's
I mean, so like before we start talking about the Castle and Key, um, is there anything that you guys can think of that's something that you think was overhyped that you tried and weren't happy with?
Like from the list or just in general?
in general.
Just in general.
Oh, Dan, I don't know. Go first. I got to think about this.
So the first thing I can think about, and I was trying to think of some distilleries that get hype, a lot of hype, and one that I thought of, the one I've never tried, one I tried, was I thought of Whistle Pig, and they had the like it wasn't too long ago where they did that collaboration with Traeger, and it was going to be this great smoked whiskey.
Yeah.
And every store I walk into, it's on the shelf, which is a dead giveaway of, nope, this wasn't that big. And the most expensive pour I ever paid for was I was at a bar and they had Whistle Pig Magellan series, which is, I mean, it goes for thousands of dollars. I think it was like 85 or $90 for the pour. And I thought, well, you know, I might as well try it. I just had Sazerac 18. I might as well try something else. And I thought it was awful.
Notice how
And
he
it's-
just casually name dropped Sazerac
Little,
18.
little, little
We wanted
Sazerac
to
18.
sponsor her. That's why.
But yeah, I thought that was so. I mean, it's
And what
I mean,
was the well, 'cause
the gimmick?
the gimmick is we're talking about doing an episode on gimmick whiskeys too.
So the Whistle Pig Magellan gimmick is it's aged in the U.S. for a while, and then they ship it on a boat down to somewhere in South America, and then they rebarrel it in Spanish oak, and then they ship it to Europe, and they put it in French oak, and then they ship it back. So they're doing the whole, it was also aged at sea, but the reason they call it the Magellan was it went the entire Atlantic circuit, basically. But it's a very expensive, hard to find whiskey, and I saw it, and I'm like, let's try it. Because if it goes for that much, it must be good, right? Not necessarily.
That was one of the interesting things when I went to the Bacta event at Gold Eagle. One of the things that he talked about when when he left Whistle Pig, which he founded, was that they started to try and push a bunch of things that he didn't agree with.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if it was those kind of like, gimmicky kind of things that he was like, this has nothing to do with making good whiskey.
This is not.
Like,
yeah.
why are we doing this? I know that, not that I know, I've never tried any of them, but I've heard from people that after he left, the Boss Hogs really took a nosedive in terms of taste. Probably because it started being about like crazy packaging and bottles than like the actual whiskey in it.
It's so I've heard two different things. One, it's because of him is one flavor. When he left, flavor changed, but that's also right around the same time Dave Pickerel stopped helping them out.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know Raj. I don't know Dave. I would say Dave's credence for whiskey is probably a little bit higher than Raj's.
Yeah.
But either way with Whistle Pig. But that's the one that I first started thinking about was when I was trying to think of different hype things was Whistle Pig does a lot of these different things and they get hyped up and then you see it on the shelf forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to focus more on not overhyped whiskeys and maybe more about the people who write about overhyped whiskeys. Because it's important because people can be swayed by a Food and Wine or a Vine or whatever those the
Bourbon
usual
Graham
suspects of publications. Yeah, Vine Pair, whatever it is. You can be swayed pretty easily just because somebody that you think is an influencer in that category. I don't want to make enemies in the industry, but this lady, Robin Hunt, who's the author of the MASH article. She has a couple more articles for MAShed. And she has a bachelor degree in fine arts. She has a degree in painting and photography, and she has a minor in English with emphasis on children's literature. And she has nothing in her resume that points to the fact that she's a whiskey expert. So you have somebody that wrote children's books at some point talking about like the 23 whiskeys you shouldn't try.
I love how Roberto took so much offense to the Willet being on that list that he decides to dive into her entire life and just berate her for being an idiot. Like, I just love his natural reaction of, this person doesn't like something I do, I'm going to destroy them now on a tiny podcast.
I'm just saying, I don't want to make interviews, but, it's kind of unfair, in my opinion, to these companies that are, trying hard to make good bourbons, and somebody's just like, oh, here's a 23 you should never buy. Says who? Did you, now, if this lady had prefaced this article and saying, I convene a panel of 15 whiskey connoisseurs, and these are the 23 whiskeys you should never try. Great. Yeah. I believe you. I will believe you. It's just some children's books author that's like, oh, I gotta write something this week for MASH. God dang it, I missed my deadline. Here it is.
That's actually a fantastic point.
Because the only thing you did wrong, Roberto, is you didn't say "with all due respect" first.
I have no respect.
Yeah.
If there's no respect, there's no due. Anyway, sorry, Robin Hunt.
So like that, I want to kind of build off that because we, are obviously on Instagram, and we follow a bunch of whiskey influencers, right? Other bourbon podcasts, and stuff like that. And I kind of looked to some of these guys for suggestions on things to try and hunt for and feature on the show. So one of the ones that came up last year, besides the Castle and Key, which we will get to, was the Blue Run High Rye. I remember seeing it popping up probably in the spring of last year, I think, was when we did that one. Mm-hmm. And it was like all over the Instagram bourbon community pages. And everybody was like, oh my God, this is like the best thing ever. Blah, blah, blah. Like hyping it up big time. And when we did it on the show, Dan was flat out like, I do not like this. Me and Roberto were a little bit more cordial. But it's not one of my favorite whiskeys. It's okay. It's not anything particularly special, especially for the price tag. I think it was like $80 or something like that. However, there are other whiskeys that I've had. Their golden rye, I think the emerald rye, are like unbelievably good. They're fantastic. But I never saw either of those hyped up on Instagram the way that high rye was. Yeah. So, and one of the things looking back at that was that I think a lot of those people got advanced bottles because they were posting about it before you could even find it on shelves. So I think they probably just had a really good marketing campaign and pushed that stuff. Yep. Pretty hard.
Apology accepted. Thanks, guys. I know that was hard for you.
I think for me, and this is not a bad thing by any means. For me, it was knowing the experience. What the history of the Castle Key Distillery and the amazing property and buildings that they have, and this story, and how it was reborn out of the ashes and blah blah. And it creates a really cool story. They're like, oh shit, and then we went to a tasting where we went through a bunch of their whiskeys, and in my mind, it was just a great whiskey. And then I think, that first time I tried it, that's what I had in my mind. And then then I tried again, and then I started seeing people talk about it, and I'm like, interesting. I was trying to make sure that I wasn't being persuaded, that I was making my own opinion. But then when the three of us were like, what do you think? And what do you think? And then I went down and I tried it. I'm like, it tastes like freaking plastic, man.
Yeah, and I guess that's where it started, is why this all came about was at work, you got to taste other people's things, right? If you're making whiskey, you got to see what other people are doing. So you have to taste a lot.
Their urine, though. Don't taste their urine. It's probably not good for you. It's like, I gotta taste some other people's things. I'm like, don't taste their urine. It's fine. Stick to whiskey.
But yeah, and a lot of times we'll do it blind. And we did a blind tasting, and everyone unanimously said this one glass that we had no idea was did not taste good at all. Like, we're like, what shitty plastic bottle did this come out of? And it was Castle and Key, and I'm like, I thought I liked it. And then I came home, and I opened my bottle, and I poured some, and I'm like, man, that didn't taste great.
Yeah.
And so that's when I reached out to you guys. I think I mentioned it to Jake first. And Jake's like, well, I wonder if it's like the cork got bad or something. And we've talked, their restoration rye is really good. I said, if it was like a cork or a packaging thing, the restoration would go to shit as well.
I had recently been looking at my Castle and Key bottles, and the one that Dan was talking about is like less than half full. So I was like, there's no way I got through half a bottle not realizing that I didn't like it,
It's probably one of those things where we were drunk and it got passed around. It happens. And so so after I said that, then you guys tried yours, because I said, hey, I tried it again. I don't think it was that great. And I know for sure Jake was skeptical of my analysis of it. And then he tried it, and then Roberto, you were the last, and then even our friend Julia had the batch 4. She tried it, which was a different batch number, and she's like, no, this isn't that good.
Yeah.
And we got, I think what it was we just got caught up in the hype, especially we were starting out. It was something that was highly hyped.
Yeah.
Probably persuaded by influencers. We've been into whiskey for a few years now, pretty heavily.
Yeah.
And I think even over the last year, the way we taste, the way we do things is completely different than we did a year ago.
Yeah.
So I think we're better whiskey tasters for what we
better
do.
palate now, more developed.
Right. So
and I know that that particular Castle and Key, I think, was a very similar situation to the Blue Run, where I saw it all over Instagram. I really hunted for it because everyone was saying how great it was, So I think it was probably a really good marketing campaign.
Yeah, I mean, and these marketing, they're hiring multi-million-dollar marketing firms, and those marketing firms are hiring 20, 30, 40 influencers to go out on Instagram and blast it and just tell them, like, not even review it, just say, this is the best thing I've drank, blah, blah. And I mean, that's the beauty of marketing. Next thing you know, you're opening a bottle that's just like, I'm sorry, what? And I forgot that at that blind taste, or when we were tasting it, Dan, you didn't like it. You're like, oh, this is not very good.
I listened to it. I said I liked it when we did the episode, because I was trying to go back, because I'm like, I remember Blue Run. I wasn't a big fan of that. I went back and I gave it positive reviews. I was probably the least high on it, but we all agreed that we thought it was a good. I think the way we left it was we thought it was, hey, if this is them starting off 2 batches in, there's going to be some really good things coming from this place.
Yeah.
If they're on to batch 4 and it's still not. But at the other side, their gin and their rye is really good.
Yeah.
It's just they haven't figured out their bourbon.
I agree, because restoration rye is freaking phenomenal. I had some last night again, just for kicks.
Yeah, I'm having the Gold Eagle barrel pick restoration rye, and it is unbelievably good. So we're not knocking Castle and Key as a brand. Just that particular first major release, the batch 2, it was not as good as we remember it, at least.
Yeah.
And I think Roberto talked to it. I think some things we should discuss a little bit is why certain things get hyped. We obviously know the marketing and influencers.
Yeah.
Roberto, you touched on a big one. Historic old distillery brought back to life. They were featured in a documentary.
Yeah.
There is a lot of
Yeah.
hype just because of that. I mean, hell, tell me that there's not hype around a beautiful bottle
It's a great bottle.
with history on it. I mean, the same thing, Blue Run, beautiful bottle. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of this has to do with marketing. Again, is the influencers, the bottle.
Yeah.
Looking at. As I was thinking of stuff today, I'm like, I was trying to think of reasons why things might get hyped, and it's like, okay, the old historical distillery brought back to life. What's another one that we went and visited that was an old historical distillery that was brought back to life that you'd never hear anything about? And Roberto, you turned me on to their whiskey.
That we
Pepper.
went to?
Pepper, 1776.
Oh, James Pepper. Yeah.
It's an old historical distillery.
Yeah.
You never heard anything about it. It has just a normal brown bottle with a old looking label on
Yeah,
it. It's not flashy, and it's so much better.
Like
Oh, it's
under
great
20
whiskey.
bucks.
Yeah.
76 is great whiskey.
But so I was trying to think of other things besides the marketing, besides historic distilleries. Any other things of why reasons certain bourbons or whiskeys get hyped more than others? What are your guys' thoughts?
I think it's the market itself. Like we're in the middle of what you would, I think all three of us consider kind of like a bourbon bubble.
Yeah.
Almost like the housing bubble in the mid to late 2000s.
Yeah.
Where, prices of everything are steadily creeping up. Even like budget bourbons now are going up by $2-3. Pretty soon Mellow Corn won't be under $20.
Yeah.
I think it's an effect of, I think, one, bourbon overall being overhyped by the market, and two, the like fervor around things. I think like the demand is just so high that it makes you want to like go out and get things. And usually like if you put in a bunch of effort to try and get something, once you have it, you're like especially excited and pumped for it. And I think sometimes that can skew your opinion.
Yeah.
I think, one big thing that's going on now is with whiskey being the popular thing, there's so many famous people just hopping on board. Like a month or two ago, the Brothers Osborne is now going to do something with Whistle Pig. Like there's going to be hype around certain people attaching their names to certain bourbons. There's the good and bad. There's so many different finishes now.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And you're seeing a lot of hype for finishes. And the problem I have with like looking at some of these and being, oh, it's finished in something different, I got to find this bottle, is I've tried a lot of finished whiskeys I don't particularly care for.
Yeah.
And it's like, just because I like your normal stuff doesn't mean I'm going to like the finish.
Right.
So that's some other things you got to watch. You could watch out for too. Is those things?
Yeah, I don't remember who said it, but somebody's, I think, quoted as saying like, just because you finish a shitty whiskey doesn't mean it's gonna make it not shitty.
Right. Yeah.
You cannot make a shitty whiskey better any way you split it. It's just not going to work. Now, there's some finished whiskeys that are freaking phenomenal out there.
Mm-hmm. There are.
Because the juice is probably already good anyway to begin with.
Right.
Or more than likely. The other thing that really adds to the hype is it's just like any bubble. It's just, going back to the Dutch with the freaking tulips, or going back to 2010 with the housing market. It's just the bubbles that people come into this market not knowing a lot about it, just like, oh, I need to buy this bottle because everybody's buying it and because it's already hyped up. And a good example is a couple of weekends ago, my bubble says hi today. A couple of weekends ago, my sister was at a party and she was showing pictures of my bourbon wall and then she was telling me, like, people were like, oh my god, he's got a Bunz, oh my god, he's got a Pappy, oh my god, that's the hype. And then those people come into the market and then start hyping it up even more. But then the bottle just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then meanwhile, those of us who actually appreciate the whiskey, well, fuck you. Now my bottle that I like is $1,000. You know?
Right.
Now my Weller 12 that I used to buy for 120, now it's 500. So thanks.
So how do you decide if you should purchase something that's being hyped up? So be it Castle and Key or other things we purchase that are hyped, how do you know if you should spend money on it before you buy it? Or what are some ways you can, or the other side is how can you avoid this happening to us if we all thought it was good and then realized maybe it was just hype that sold us that we thought it was good.
But I think that's only happened to us maybe once. I mean, I don't think that's happened too many times where we're like, oh wait, I said that was
not just for us, Roberto. We're professionals. The people that are listening that aren't professionals, we're trying to help them out a little bit.
No, I mean
the what's her name? The Rebecca Hunts or whatever her name was. How do we help her out?
Robin.
How do we help her out to make sure she doesn't have another list of 23 that she regrets?
I mean, honestly, with all the amount of whiskey that's out there, or distilleries, or people distilling whiskey, or finishing it, right? There's still a lot of places that are finishing whiskeys from MGP, etc. We recently, I told you that we went to Milam and Green, which is a micro distillery. I mean, it's a small operation, but they distribute countrywide. It's pretty amazing. And it's, they're making some of the best whiskeys out there, grown and distilled in Texas. So I say that because that's how I found some of my favorites these days is, going to the actual places that are distilling whiskey, tasting it. But if not, just like we did in Illinois, find a guy that will have either whiskeys to taste or will let you have a taste of the whiskey. Just like not only Sam out there in Illinois, but this lady that we found here in San Antonio. I walk in, whatever new bottle she gets, she puts one on the tasting shelf, just like Sam. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, you want to try this new Stella? Because this is great. That would be my recommendation. Just like we've said many times, build a relationship with a guy or a girl. Have them educate you a little. Normally, usually they know a lot. And many times they'll let you try it, or go to the distilleries themselves and try them for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, because I was all gung ho on buying a bottle of Garrison Cowboy, and then we went to Sam's event, and I'm like, nope, I'll pass. And what was funny was I could have spent a couple $100 on that, and I'm like, that's dumb to spend a couple $100 on that whiskey. Yeah. And then I bought a $180 bottle of scotch, and I don't like scotch, so but. I tasted that scotch.
You like that one though?
I'm like, you know what? I don't like scotch. That's a good whiskey, and I bought that, and I'm glad I did. But it's going with an open mind for tasting, I think.
Yep.
I think the other thing too is kind of what brought me to this, and it's almost impossible to do beforehand. But if you're at a place like Gold Eagle has their tasting room, Sam has his, your people have theirs. Don't just do it. Don't just try the one if you're thinking about buying. Blind it.
Yeah.
Have them pour you something that you like, and have them blind it and see if you think it's better or not. And then if it is, then it's worth the price. But I think honestly that blind tasting is the only way that I realized that, hey, I need to go try that again, because I didn't think that there was any way that it was not that good.
Yeah.
And I think blinds though. Well, Jake can talk to Jake. You go to all the Gold Eagle ones. Like Jake from Gold Eagle says, how many times does Blanton's or Taylor lose in a blind?
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of, and he purposefully picks matchups, where some cheap bottle goes up against a really expensive bottle, and a lot, not every time, but a lot of the times the cheap bottle actually ends up beating out the more expensive one. And I mean, it just has to do with the actual taste of the whiskey, Yeah, I mean, and I make a lot of my decisions now based on feedback from people, that have actually tasted it before. Or I actually ask Jake or Sam, hey, have you tried this? What do you think? And I know both of them will be honest with me.
Yeah, exactly.
There's been times where I've asked Jake, hey, I'm looking for X or Y. Do do you have it, and is it any good? And he'll be like, honestly, it's not worth it. Like,
Yeah.
As much as I want to sell you $120 bottle, it's, whatever, like, it's not worth the price. So I mean, getting a good, trusted source, I think is a good thing too. But yeah, I can't recommend blind tasting enough.
Agreed.
It's definitely the best way to figure out for yourself if you really like something or not.
Nice.
Yeah. The only thing I'll add, because I don't have anything to build on those two great points. One, that my camera decided to go fuzzy on me because this piece of crap keeps going in and out of focus. Sometimes when I do this, it helps. Nope, it didn't help. Anyway, so now I'm just fuzzy PDL here for the rest of the podcast. The only thing I'll add, bartenders are also a really good source. If you go to your, especially the ones that you know, and I say that because, for example, I walked into the Palm in downtown San Antonio, which is, it's a national steakhouse chain. It's great. But I went to the bar and I asked the guys, like, oh man, that's a really good, lineup. What do you recommend? And he's like, he brings the 2 bottles of Pappy. Here, these 2. And I'm like, and I told him, no, I'm not that guy. I like whiskey. And then once he realized that I wasn't there for the hype, he's like, oh shit, let me recommend this and that. But if you go to your local whiskey bar or your local bar, and especially if you already know the bartenders or somebody there at the place, ask them for recommendations, because they'll tell you. I don't know how many times I've walked into a whiskey bar or a bar where the bartender's like, dude, like, my Bullet Rye old fashions, like, take anything down, hands down. I'm like, yeah, I agree. Bullet Rye is one of my favorite old fashioned whiskeys. But again, bartenders will be very honest, and most of them won't try to just go for the top shelf and recommend something, even though that's their job, is to make money. But if you build a relationship with one, you're like, dude, okay, what's new? What's out there? What have you tried? And they'll give you some really good, honest advice.
Yeah, it's tough. And one thing that this leads to, or one of the issues that all this has, is some of those bourbons or whiskeys we talk about, even like the Weller Special Reserve. Part of the reason that they're so hyped is because they are so good. They are cheap, but everyone wants them because they taste so good. and I like you this way better, Roberto.
This is how we're used to seeing you all blurry and shit,
Yeah, it's really bad. But anyway, all right, I'm gonna turn it off for a second and see if it works. Sorry, Dan, go ahead.
No, I just like some of the reliable ones that get hyped up and are hard to find are because everyone knows that they're so damn good.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that's just like figuring it out for yourself.
Yep.
Which ones, are actually worth it and which ones aren't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice.
It's got to come down to what your preferences are.
Yep.
Yeah.
And don't just listen to, like what you said. Don't just listen to a couple people, because you never know who they're sponsored by or who's paying them. Yeah. Which, by the way, no one's paying us jack shit. So this is all unfiltered responses.
You can trust us.
Close to it.
If someone wants to pay us a lot of money, I'll sell out in a heartbeat. Like my price is not high. Let's throw that out there.
If Sazerac sends us a letter tomorrow, I'll be like, man, dude, Blandon's is the best freaking whiskey ever. You should pay $300 for it.
Well, if they want to
drink Pappy 12.
Yeah. Roberto, if Sazerac wants to find us and get in touch with us, what are some of the best places to do that?
That burned my throat. I'm telling you, this is not an advertisement. I've always been, since I started getting into bourbons, Maker's Private Select. They make some freaking. Oh look, I'm back. They make some really good bottles. Their 21 release was great. Their 2020 release is to date my favorite. They're normally around the 110, 115 proof. And then the profile, they play with it. And Jake at Gold Eagle was explaining to us and how Makers plays with their Private Select profile. And they have a really, man, their barrel pick is freaking awesome. At Gold Eagle for the private select. I forget what the profile was. Do you remember what it was called, by the way? I'm curious, but I don't.
Is that Alien and Predator, or is that a different one?
I think it was no. I think at Gold Eagles. I think it was that. This one's called Pulling the Rain.
I think Jake and his brother each picked one.
Yeah,
and one was Alien and one was Predator, so they call it the Alien versus Predator.
They had that one, then they also did a Jake pick and what's his brother's name? They had the Jake pick and his I think they do 2 every year, but
it's some of my favorites. I cannot recommend it enough, and it's one of those. Going back to the hype, it's one of those that it's not hyped, but it's a freaking good ass bourbon. And
we talked about how Dan has a special place in his heart for Maker's Mark.
So he got me started. Open up the rabbit hole.
Just the regular bottom shelf swill Maker's Mark.
Got me started on whiskey.
Dude, Maker's they make some good whiskeys. 101 is great. So they can find us at Bourbon Matters on the Instagrams and Facebook at Bourbon Matters is both of our handles. And we have a website. I think it was updated recently, so that's pretty good. Damn.
As of last night.
Must be nice to work, to not work. I work really hard this week, and I haven't had time for anything. But yeah, the website is bourbonmatterspodcast.com. It's got all our episodes. It's got a stream to our Instagram account. So that's exciting. But yeah, we also have podcasts though. We have podcasts somewhere.
This is a podcast. You are correct.
Nice.
You can find us on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, pretty much anywhere that you listen to podcasts.
Nice.
And before we go, I do want to just reiterate that while I think we're slightly disappointed in some of the Castle and Key bourbons, I think all of us really enjoy their rise. Their gins are phenomenal.
Yeah.
They have seasonal releases for the gin, one in the spring, one in the fall, and they're excellent. We tried the spring one at the event last night, and it was fantastic. Very floral, lots of like spring kind of flavors in it. I love that. It would make a really good gin and tonic, just like a little bit of lime.
How long does spring in Illinois?
Well, we got about
sometimes 2 weeks, sometimes like 3 months.
Dude, it was 92 degrees in San Antonio today.
It'll be spring in 2 weeks. It was
raining today here.
Yeah, it'll be spring in 2 weeks, and then second winter for the next 3 or 4, and then summer for about 10 weeks.
Yeah, and then back to the fall.
Yeah. But yeah, and also with Castle and Key, if you're in Kentucky, go see this distillery. The distillery is an unbelievable tour. It's a beautiful place.
They do have a nice property. Yeah. I would recommend just to see it, man. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I'm upset that I didn't get to go, and Dan kind of ditched us and went by himself, but that's okay.
I wasn't working, and all you guys, I have to work till this time today. And I said, well, I'm not working, so I'm going.
I wasn't working either, but, teaching, unfortunately, doesn't let you out at 11 a.m. Cool.
All right, guys. This was a fun revisit. Way to admit our mistakes that have passed.
Yeah.
Learn.
Yeah. Gotta keep it honest.
Yeah.
At least until we sell our souls out. So
I give me money and I will.
It's not even much, guys. If you're listening and you're thinking about sponsoring a podcast,
it's much less than you think.
I don't even need money. I just give me samples. Send me samples. I'll sell out. It's fine.
If you think of a low number, cut it in half. That's probably where my number's at.
Cool.
All right.
All right.
Talk to you guys later. Cheers.